Thank you. It's going to be a really good panel as soon as we get our third panelist up here. Oh, hi.
All right.
Bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
All right. That's Bipul Sinha, who's the CEO of Rubrik. Asaf Resnick is the CEO of Big Panda. They were both in the venture world prior to going and being entrepreneurs, and so it really gives them a unique perspective. We're going to take about 25 minutes to talk about that perspective, how it changes when you move around, and then we're going to have questions at the end. But of course, please feel free to post them on the app, or people can come up on those microphones at the end. Why don't you each tell us a little bit about what you're doing today, the venture background, just a couple minutes of bio, and then we'll go to some questions.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Bipul Sinha, founder CEO of Rubrik. Before Rubrik, I spent many years as venture capitalist, a lot of years at Lightspeed Venture Partners, and before that, Bloomberg Capital. I'm an engineer turned financier turned entrepreneur. In terms of very quickly, Rubrik is a backup and recovery solution company for enterprises. And while I was investing before Rubrik, I mostly focused on enterprise infrastructure and cloud solutions. Some of my portfolio companies include Nutanix, Pernix Data, Numerify, Hootsuite, and others.
Yeah, thanks. Asaf?
Hi, Asaf Resnick, CEO of Big Panda, started it about 3 years ago, and previous to that was an investor with Sequoia Capital for about 6 years. That's it.
Yeah, so I wanted to get this sense of how your investing background informs your actions today. So what did you learn in the investment world that has helped you, or maybe not helped you, as you moved over onto the entrepreneurial side? Is there anything in the venture world that helped you as you moved over to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, quite a lot. I'd say that coming into venture, I had been very specific roles in startups, but when you're part of a venture, in the VC, you see a lot of cycles, and you see what it takes to grow. A company has to do a lot of things right to succeed, and from engineering to product market fit to marketing to finance to sales, and seeing that kind of pattern recognition across multiple companies and multiple verticals and multiple stages helped me make a lot of smarter decisions.
Seeing those patterns in the venture context.
Yeah, and learning, within my own company, as we started off, crawling and then walking and now running, hopefully learning from previous mistakes. We made a lot of new mistakes,
sure.
But being able to see that kind of pattern recognition across different functions of the organization was really invaluable to me.
Bipul, same for you?
This is a good question. You're asking whether is there any redeeming value of being a VC. Answer is yes. But like everything, in every experience has both positives and negatives. I think the positives of having a venture capital background is really understanding what it means to create value in the marketplace, and how to bring a new product or new technology into the market, and how to bring talent around it to be able to go and manifest this idea, this product into the marketplace and create an impact. And that has served me well as a founder CEO of Rubrik. But also there is a negative side of being a venture capitalist, because venture capitalists live in a world of greed and fear. So greed is that that you invest in a company, there's a large market opportunities. If this set of people execute well, then you go build a very, very large company. The fear is that whether they can really execute, whether the market will change, whether something else will come in and disrupt this whole idea, this whole project. Right. So as an entrepreneur, you need to have a blind faith into an idea, and you execute on that with blind faith. Having a venture guy, you always think about positives and negatives. So sometimes when you have to have a blind faith and you have to be bullheaded about driving into the market, you analyze a lot, and that could be an hindrance of being an entrepreneur. So it's both positive and negative, but overall I think is a positive thing.
So you'd say the venture, in a sense, is a little more cynical because you're always looking at both sides, whereas the entrepreneur, you just have to be pushing ahead no matter what.
Exactly.
No matter what. Let me ask you a little bit about the relationship. Do you think there's been a lot of press over the last couple of weeks about the relationship between investors and entrepreneurs? Is it sort of necessarily adversarial? I know a lot of investors come in and say, we're going to give you operating help. We're not just dumb money. We're going to really help you. And some do. Some investors are very, very helpful. But what do you think about that, this idea that the investors and the entrepreneurs are sort of inherently at odds with each other?
So I can take this.
Please.
So I think if you look at the way industry has evolved in the last 10, 15 years, venture capital industry, because of the abundance of venture capital, there was a lot more money chasing a lot fewer deals. Mm-hmm. As a result, investors presented themselves as our job is to help you, enable you, take my money please. And as a result, some of the entrepreneurs forgot that venture capitalists are really is a partnership between venture capital and entrepreneur. And venture capitalist's job is to keep you honest. Mm-hmm. It's not because as an entrepreneur you're doing something wrong, because as an entrepreneur you are driving very hard and fast and you are living in your trench, and sometimes you lose a sense of a bigger picture, sometimes bigger perspective. Yeah. And their job is to help you understand bigger perspective, something that you may or may not like at that moment, but it's their job to make you realize what it means to run a company with broader ecosystem or market activity in mind. As a result, this is like an aligned relationship, but this relationship inherently has conflict. Right. And balance of this alignment of company's success and conflict, because they are trying to be a good, so to say, father to you.
Let me follow up with you on that. Do you think that the terms ever get in the way of people, being in the same boat and rowing the same way? And I'm thinking about, obviously the preferred versus common stock, but also things like drag-alongs, other terms that are in typical financing arrangements. Do those get in the way of everybody pushing for the same thing?
So my view on a lot of these terms are, like in any relationship, at any given point in time, whoever has more power drives the agenda. Mm-hmm. So if you are an entrepreneur and if you need capital and there is not market demand for your product or your company, which is your product in this case, mm-hmm. then the investor will drive their agenda, because they are definitely worried about something. That's why they're not jumping in. So you have to give something to get that capital. Right. And if there is a lot of demand for your product, which is your company, then you can drive your agenda and keep terms very simple. So this is like a happy middle that you have to come with your investor. But I always, as a venture capitalist as well as an entrepreneur, remind myself that we are building and taking action in this company to not make investors happy. We are doing this for the betterment of this company, and how do we make this company achieve its highest potential? And if you are doing anything which is outside of that goal, then you're not doing the right thing. Yeah. And as long as you are driving things with that goal in mind, then your investors should be aligned, theoretically. And if they are not, it means that fundamentally your relationships have not developed.
They should be aligned.
So I take a little bit of a different point of view on the adversarial relationship. I think that naturally there are interests that are aligned and there are interests that are not aligned, and they can sometimes meet each other and they sometimes diverge from each other. And with that, I'll explain what I mean. And with that, it's a very personal. It depends on the personality of the venture of your partner. So at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, your job is to build a large company, take care of your shareholders, take care of your employees, take care of yourself. your investor's job is to generate is to build a large company, but ultimately to generate good returns from their LPs. Most of the time, your interests are aligned because if they help you build a large company, they'll generate very large returns. When you're at the negotiation table in the seed round, in the A round, and the B round, your interests are not aligned because they're trying to maximize their economics. You're trying to maximize your own economics. After you make a deal, hopefully you're all rowing in the same direction. Now, at that time when your interests are not aligned, it really comes down to the personality of who you're dealing with, because some people will take their mandate of, I have to maximize my returns, to a place where, well, I'm going to squeeze you for every preference and every nook and cranny that I can. Right. And some people see that as, look, keep the terms plain vanilla. If you're a good entrepreneur and you build a large company, we're all going to be very happy with the returns. And those are very, very different interpretations of the same mandate. And it really comes down to not even the same venture firm, it comes down to who is the partner. When I choose my partners, when I've chosen my partners of who is invested with us, the negotiation process with different VCs is a very, very telling is a very telling sign of how your relationship will be. And I've definitely said no to investors that I felt were too aggressive and too nitpicky with their terms and conditions.
And as you get to know venture investors, like we've all been in venture firms before, we all understand this concept of sway. Like people can get deals done and other people can't get deals done, and the reason is that some people had success and some people haven't had quite as much success, and really it has an effect on the ability to actually put money to work within a fund. Do you think about that when you're talking to investors? I feel like I have an incoming message here.
It's the Snapchat.
It's just reset. I got it, thanks.
From my perspective, every transaction in the world has to have a driver of that transaction. When we go out there to sell our product and we sell to enterprises, we need to identify and build a champion who takes our message to the management team of the customer and drives it and says that this is the right product or technology that we are going to invest in, and this is how we are going to kind of build our platform. So it's the same in the venture capital, that when you pick your champion who is taking your message back to the partnership, that person has to have credibility and have to have conviction to be able to drive your message. In my mind, there are people in investment who think small or who always think about downside, and they create terms to have downside protection. And then there are people in the venture world who think about upside, and they say that what if this becomes 1000x bigger? So people who think about fundamentally upside, they don't go and create these onerous terms, because people who create onerous terms think small. So in your process, when you are finding your venture partner or your partner who is your investor, you have to identify who you are, what you want to become as a company, and who you should be aligning with. If somebody thinks big, and if your idea is to go build a $200 million company and flip it, don't go to the big thinker, because then you are misaligned.
Right.
So, sure. I mean, I think your question was, does the power dynamics within the partnership influence?
Does that affect you? Yeah.
Clearly it does, because you don't, at the end of the day, you want a champion in the transaction that can push the transaction forward, and you want someone who can do that. It's very hard, unless, I came from Sequoia. I know the power dynamics within that firm very well. I know who can get things done and who can't. It's very hard to see that from the outside, unless you know the firm very well, and kind of by definition, you're not going to. You can get a sense of it by how long someone has been there, but even then, it's hard to say who's close to the plate. For me, it's just as important, or I'd say even much more important, that I actually like this person, and that I want to spend the next 5 to 7 years of my life speaking with this person every week.
I think it's a really good point. And the point is that you are working with an individual. You're also working with a firm, but you're working with an individual as well.
I think first you're working with an individual, and then you're working with a firm. So there's definitely a lot of, the good firms have things like human capital partners and biz dev people, and they can open doors, and the cachet of a brand can help you recruit good people, but none of that, I mean, that's all nice, but it's the partner who will be on the board, if you're very lucky, everything will go really, really well. If you're the other 99% of entrepreneurs, you have good times and bad times, and how is that person going to act in your board during bad times is much more critical than who is that, what is that firm.
Totally agree with that. We got a question that was somewhat related. Can a VC be a mentor, or should I look elsewhere? Is a VC going to be your friend or a mentor to an entrepreneur?
It's a good question,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's one size fits all. I typically think that, for me, board meetings are kind of like a courtroom where you don't want to ask a question you don't already know the answer to,
Right.
and you don't want to bring tough decisions to a board meeting that you haven't already socialized with your board members.
Yeah, it's not a place where you want to do sort of blue sky discussion.
No, it's not. So, I mean, I think there can be board members where there is a mentor relationship, but it's really a personal question. I mean, the answer is yes, but I wouldn't expect that out of the gate. These are busy people. They have a lot of boards that they sit on.
Well, you're both CEOs. It's a lonely job. Well, who do you look to? Do you look to VCs? I mean, who do you look to for your mentorship? And
For me, your investor cannot be your mentor, because by definition, your investor and board members are judgmental, and their job is to evaluate you and give you strategic advice when they see that, at least in their perspective, things are not going in the right direction. Mentorship is different. Mentorship is about you being vulnerable and able to accept your own your criticism and able to kind of find solution. So it's better to look for mentors who are outside of your company and who has any kind of relationship with your company. There are a lot of very successful entrepreneurs, venture capitalists who are outside of the realm of your own company. Finally, bottom line is the following. If you think about your board meeting as a political place and you have to manipulate it, and if you worry too much about who is your venture firm and what are the power dynamics, in my mind, this is all waste of time. Bottom line is the following. You are running a company, and your job is to not go present to your board what's best happening in your company. Your job is to present where we are as a company, what are the strategic challenges that the company is facing, and how are you tackling those challenges, and ask for the right inputs. Everything else is a status update, and you can actually send them an email and just list all the status update. They are not there to do a rah-rah talk that, okay, I hired 50 people and we built 2 versions of the product. Who cares? What they're really interested in that, what's going on, what's top of mind for you as a CEO, and what's going on in the company strategically, and how they can give you advice, bring resources to you to solve your problem. Because if you're a startup, you have challenges all the time, and how can you leverage the brains around the room for
there is a
to
little
solve that
tension
problem?
there, though, because I think as a CEO, you kind of want to move through the agenda and have the meeting be over in the sense of no surprises. At the same time, you do want to get input from the board members, and that can go off in a direction that's kind of unpredictable sometimes, right? So it's difficult to manage.
Typically, the way I do it is my style's a little bit different. I do think that open discussions with your board members is extremely important, but I prefer to do that on a one-on-one and brainstorm, because I never like decisions by committee, and certainly when it's not me and my VPs making those decisions.
Right.
So I tend to have almost every board member I talk to either once a week or once every 2 weeks, and there is a certain amount of overhead to that, but there's also a lot to be gained from that as well.
Do you use them as resources? I know that, for example, in one of the companies I work with, there's an outside board member who used to be a CFO, and the CFO of the company spends time with that board member to kind of get No?
No. I think for me personally, I think the best use of, I think a good VC can do three things. They can help you recruit good talent, they can help you open doors, and they can help you with strategic advice. Me personally, I haven't had the kind of relationship where, hey, come in and work 1 day or 2 days a week, those kinds of things.
Let me get in one more question, and then we'll ask if anyone has some from the audience. But there's an increasing thought out there, certainly at the SEC and other places, that employees within the companies who, after all, buy shares through their sweat equity in the companies, that they don't know enough about the internal financials within the company. They don't know enough about the preference stack. They don't know enough about the option plan. They don't know how it affects them. And I've had kind of the opposite reaction, because I think that the employees in the companies that I work with often know more about it than the VCs or anybody else. But I'd just like to get your reactions to that. I mean, is there a thought that in an acquisition scenario, maybe the employees don't know enough about the preferences that are ahead of the common stock? I mean, Bipul, is that an issue for you, or who cares, or what?
I can take it. So when it comes to a stock, people are very emotional about it, as you can imagine, because there are a lot of stories in Silicon Valley where people did not so awesome things, and they surprised their employees. What we have done in our company, we run an open board meeting. So every employee in the company is actually invited to the board meeting.
To every board meeting?
To every board meeting.
Wow.
And if somebody is remote, then they actually dial in. So far we have done this. We are 135 employees in the company.
Wow.
And lawyers have not shut us down yet. So we like to keep it transparent, because this is also a forum for everyone in the company to see that what is it that we are facing as a company, collectively across all departments. But this is a real important issue with every startup that I have worked as a board member, now as a CEO, and we make sure that the total number of stock count or money in the bank, these things are kind of public information within the company.
So people know what cash is, and they know what the burn rate is,
Yes.
and that sort of thing.
They know everything.
That's pretty amazing. I don't know any other company that does that. Do you? Do you know any other company that does it? Do you?
We don't do that.
Okay. Well, a great panel. Sir, you have a question?
Hi there, Hank. My name's Kulvinder Singh. I'm a lawyer in Roseville, a little bit up past Sacramento. My question is actually for you.
Oh.
Startups
Yeah.
generally don't like to pay a whole bunch of legal fees.
Yeah.
And how do you give them legal advice? And I guess you really don't want to be at their board meetings, because then you'll be running their company.
Yeah.
You want to run your law firm. You don't want to run their company for them.
Yeah.
So the question is for you.
What do we do?
How do you help them?
Yeah, so I was a partner at Wilson Sonsini for a long time, and there's a guy there called Larry Sonsini, who I think is probably the best lawyer in the history of the world. And he has this model of the three circles, he calls it. The lower left-hand circle is startups, the middle circle is sort of M&A, and you're going public, and then the upper right-hand circle is big companies, HP, Apple. And it has been historically the case that if you don't work with companies at a startup phase, or you don't work with them at an early phase, it's very difficult to keep that business as a lawyer as the company gets bigger. And so that firm and our firm would do a lot of discounting and a lot of deferral of fees and a lot of maybe taking a little bit of stock in lieu of fees, et cetera, or in lieu or as a result of the deferral, in order to try to make up the economics. But and by the way, every law firm within the Valley does that. So, that's kind of the model, and everyone should expect those sort of economics when they go to talk to a law firm. I think lawyers in the Valley are probably the greatest deal in the world, really, because you get great expertise, and it actually turns out not to cost all that much, I think. Sir?
Hi, this is Anand. I'm a volunteer here at TiE. Question for the panelists. When you guys were, investors, when you went to the board, what were your favorite ways to engage with the entrepreneurs? And now, when you are entrepreneurs, if the VCs try to do the same thing, you like it or you don't?
Well, my favorite way, and this is how I still kind of do a lot of my interviews, is just to take a walk with people and have a conversation. I'm not big on kind of formal presentations, so I like to take a walk and kind of, I think it loosens people up and gets them in a much more free-flowing conversation mode. So, you know, when I was a VC, typically the first meeting is always, hey, you know, let's see the deck and go through all the basics. But once it's interesting enough to say, hey, we want to dig in. You want to get a sense of how this person thinks in normal everyday life, not how can they give a good speech, which is what a first or second presentation is. On the other side of the table, no one's ever done that to me as a VC. I mean, I kind of would like it because that's just kind of my conversational style. I think you can also tell much more about a person in a conversation than you can in a presentation, but
Yeah.
no one's ever done that to
I
me.
like the walk because you're not facing the person. You know, you're kind of going with them, and you're going forward, and it's really nice. Plus, you know, you can burn some calories, get some steps.
Yes.
So when I was investor, I had a principle that I never invested in any company that I didn't believe in the founding team. And I never invested in a company where I thought that I need to go replace the CEO.
No.
So I never replaced any CEO. I always supported the founding team. And I passed on great opportunities where I felt, where everyone said that, oh, this person who is the CEO is not the right CEO for the company. I said, if this is not the right CEO of the company, then I'm not going to invest. So I took the approach that work hard, find the right set of entrepreneurs to start the company and support those entrepreneurs through the journey. And I like to take a similar approach to my own entrepreneurial journey, where I like to have investors who have faith in my abilities to do the right thing. And at the same time, I'm open to criticism or feedback, just like I used to have a very, very open dialogue about like what's going right and what's going wrong. And that's the approach I'm taking. So far, it works. I have a very supportive investor board members. They've been 2.5 years in this business.
No, it's great, and to think that they're willing to have public board meetings, that says a lot. I mean, it says an awful lot. Okay, well, listen, thank to both of you for coming up and talking, sharing your experiences with us. Been a good panel, and I thank you very much. Thank you.